Morning and happy new year, and welcome to 2025. And this is Jump's first webinar of the year. So, one we think will kick off and hope it kicks you off on the right foot. So, irrespective of the economic performance of the UK and the globe, we think you've got to position yourself correctly in the marketplace. And then 2025 will be a year of growth. So here at Jump, our mission is to help all recruitment agencies grow and scale via our webinars. We're going to start producing podcasts as well, so watch this space. And by applying sort of our expertise to our clients in any way that we can. So this week we're starting off with, what do you want to be known for? As the question poses, it's what do you want to be known for? So there is no data on this. So Paul and Martin will be really happy that I'm not going to go through a load of data set from there. So as we said, we've got Paul and Martin with us today. Dave's with a client and Heather's with a client. So I'm going to kick off straight away. But I'm going to use a comment that Dave uses all the time with us. He says, you need to place yourself in the market before the market places you. And that's what we're going to cover today and touch on. So here's the first question. So how are you positioning yourself in the market to ensure your brand remains distinctive and relevant in 2025?
I'll jump in first, Paul.
You go for it, Martin.
Brave man. I think there's two sides to this. The positioning in the market is, where do you see an emerging gap in the marketplace? Where do you see an area that's going to explode that you can take advantage of and ride that wave for growth? But then the second part of the question is, where do your customers want the service to be provided to them today? So it's that difference between what will customers need in 2025 as it goes on, and what do customers think they need today. And that is slightly different. It's the classic Henry Ford quote about, if I asked customers what they wanted, they'd say faster horses. And I think in order to have a successful 2025, you do have to answer both sides of that question. So you do need to have the ability to deliver what customers want today. And Howard, you talked about this at the back end of last year. When we talk to clients about this, they simply want great CVs in a timely fashion for a good price. And you have to be able to demonstrate that you as a business can deliver that service today, and that you have case studies, referrals, recommendations that can evidence your ability to do that. And then in the second part of the question is where do you see the emerging gap? This is where the concept of thought leadership comes in. Where do you see that space where clients are going to have a need that they don't yet quite understand, and how can you get there first and be seen as the kind of the market opener there? And that's when your personal brand on LinkedIn, social media, where you can talk about this consistently and with credibility comes in. And that'll allow you to be seen as the expert in that space as the customer becomes conscious that there is a need in that area as well. But I think you have to answer both those questions to have a good year.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Thanks, Martin. I sometimes make analogies between our industry and the retail industry. And, when you look at the top retailers, what are they consistently doing? They're consistently changing their displays, their shop windows. They're consistently restocking with new items, with new commodities. And I think that, when you go into a new period of, as we are now in the 25, the way you look has to change. And it changes because, as you've just said, Martin, your customers are seeking different services, seeking different attitudes and advice from you. So I think if you look at it just purely from the perspective of what do you look like, I guess you really do have to consider, well, let's have a look at our website, let's look at our positioning on social media. How do we look? Have we changed the shop window? Do we need to amend it? I must say, one of the first things I always do when I'm approached by people who are interested in working with me and with Jump is I look at their website, obviously, and I look at their news areas to see what's coming up or what they've posted recently. And I'm always amazed when I see very little on those news areas, or the last post was a year, 2 years ago. It doesn't give a good image. And I think your image is super important and you need to pay attention to it. How do you look from the outside? And we're not just talking about clients here, we're talking about candidates. And this is kind of the second answer that I would bring into this. I don't think, and I don't think anybody would disagree with me, that the current economy is likely to make a dramatic twist and turn anytime soon. candidate shortages of the right skill sets still extremely difficult. I don't think we're going to find an avalanche of great candidates heading in our direction in the near future. So having a real look at your stock, go back to the retail analogy, and making sure you've got sufficient candidates of the right caliber, and that means a strategy for engaging with candidates on your CRM and looking again at your website, at your social media presence, and so forth is super important, because at the end of the day, if your shop looks great but you've got nothing on the shelves, you're not going to be an awful lot of use to your clients. So just to add those kind of points to Martin's.
So I'm going to sort of look at this in a similar vein, but slightly different sort of approach. I keep talking to my clients about, people keep talking about it's been a hard market, and I keep asking the same question. I'm going to probably answer this question several times in this webinar, that, how many people are starting a new job on Monday and how many have you placed? And so what I think is that most recruitment agencies get to believe their own hype when actually they're obscure to the vast majority of their marketplace. And because if you're obscure to your marketplace, then you're not positioned in your marketplace. So what you say counts, where you say it is important. So if you're not talking about what your clients are talking about, why would your clients and your candidates listen to you, and why would they engage with you? So each niche will have a different conversation going on and different things going on. So yes, there's lots of conversations that will be hidden within the four walls of the businesses, but for you to connect with your clients, you need to position yourself where you can influence the market, and therefore you need to be talking about what your clients are talking about. You need to be talking where they are hanging out, whether that's LinkedIn, whether that's Facebook, whether that's TikTok, or whatever the latest social media platform is that people are talking about. That is where we should be starting to think about putting our position, putting our voice into the marketplace. So if you're not part of that conversation, not part of that marketplace, and therefore, going back to Dave's comment, the market will place you, and they'll place you in that obscure box that nobody knows who you are. And Paul, we said this last week in our own board meeting, that Jump is very well known to its clientele, but we are a hidden secret to the rest of the recruitment marketplace. And we need to get outside of that marketplace and work that. So I think we've got to start to think, to position yourself in the marketplace, you have to be where your clients are and where your candidates are, and you have to be talking about what they're talking about, and therefore you have to influence the marketplace. You can't do that from behind your keyboard. You can't do that sat in your office. You have to get yourself out there. So I think 3 really interesting answers, different answers, but I think a really different sort of way to sort of look at it, and a great way to flip into the rest of this webinar. So let's move the dial a little bit. So what steps then do you think you are taking to refresh and evolve your service offering to align with emerging clients and candidate needs?
I think this is one of the toughest questions that a business owner will face, because it's so easy to get distracted by day to day and forget about the need to innovate and create and keep ahead of the curve. And there's a great example. When I was running a business, we sold a really creative solution to a customer, and they were very satisfied. They signed us up, and it was a multi-year solution that we sold to them. And at the end of that renewal period, we didn't get renewed. No conversation, weren't renewed. And when I did a wash up with the customer to find out why, they said, you thought you sold us an innovative product. We thought we were buying an innovative partner, and you didn't keep refreshing your service. And that really was an eye-opener for me as a business owner, for the need to constantly refresh what you're looking to do. And another reason it's so hard with either a solopreneur or if you've got a small team around you is that as a business leader, it's really hard to be creative in a vacuum, and being that only person to have that creative idea. So my message is, keep having conversations with peers, customers, candidates, asking them what they need, what they want. It's through that constant curiosity that you will get a spark that will allow you to think, I can build something here that can meet that demand. And then a second point I want to make is, we're increasingly seeing in the market, and actually we're advising in the market, become a specialist, dominate a niche. And if you narrow the service offering that you're looking to operate within, quite often end customers want a broader solution. So I would say, be bold as a business owner and talk to complementary businesses in your space. How can you partner together with them to create a service that doesn't exist in the marketplace and that a single entity can't solve? And a good example is in the professional contracting space, there are lots of senior contractors out there who are desperate to find a way to stay outside of IR35, to monetize their service better, to run multiple projects and not do time and materials contracting. So how can you as an agency work with those contractors to provide a solution and deliver multiple output-based projects rather than time and materials contracting? And that's just one example. But in your market, think, how can I partner with other suppliers to customers to create a solution that doesn't exist otherwise?
I think that's brilliant advice, Martin. And I think we could come back to this point, the first question in a sense. What is it you're going to offer people that they really need? And we're very good as an industry of sitting in boardrooms talking to each other about what we think are great ideas, if indeed we do that. Because as I said earlier, I think going into each 12-month period, thinking that you've sat down and planned for the next year purely because you've put together some budgets and targets and goals and KPIs is not even a fraction of what you should be doing. The issue here is that if you're not out talking to clients and candidates to understand what they want, and you haven't got your ear to the ground paying attention to the trends and the metrics in your particular sectors, and you're not tracking your clients and potential clients in terms of their activities, and there's easy ways to do that these days, then your understanding of what they need is fairly limited. The thing that has really bothered me for so long now, particularly coming out of COVID, where we all had to work from home, is just the lack of client contact that's still very evident in our industry. I get quite frustrated with it that we seem to have this sedentary attitude to recruitment. We sit in our offices, we stare at the screens, we whack around on keyboards. We don't get out and see clients. Back in my business at Office Angels, every consultant had a target of a minimum of 5 client meetings a week, as well as doing the standard 360-degree job. Now, many of my people would have exceeded those numbers every single week. That was a combination of existing, lapsed, and new clients. Why aren't we doing that? How are you going to know what clients want unless you're sitting in front of them regularly asking the questions? And I don't know if anybody watched this yesterday. I was just, watching the TV. It was about Marks and Spencer. It's just interesting that, the market leader, arguably in their field, and it was about food and their innovative attitude towards new products, and then going to the public and getting people to taste food to find out what they thought about it, listening to what they wanted, going back, amending recipes and so forth. These are good analogies for our industry. Don't sit there thinking you've got the answers. Go and talk to people. And I think that also applies to candidates. And just let's remind ourselves, there are no distinctions between clients and candidates. They're the same human being. We just catch them at different points in their career cycles. So go talk to people. Do not sit in your offices. Make sure that your people are consistently sitting in front of clients.
So I think I'm going to change the angle that we're approaching, because we're all talking about clients. Well, I think actually, and Martin said this about what I've said earlier on later on last year, about I keep asking my clients what the clients really want, and what they actually want is a really good quality candidate. So if we start to build better candidate pools, and if you want to differentiate yourself from the market and look different to every other recruitment agency, when a client calls you and talks about a job, if you've actually got candidates that can do that job there and then, and you can push that candidate to the client on that call, then that is a huge differentiator to what we have at the moment. So I think we've got to start to think about capturing candidates at a different time. Where we catch candidates at the moment is when they are on the market looking for a job, and we're trying to push them. But for that candidate, what we've done is we've opened Pandora's box, and they are already looking through other agencies and other means to get themselves a job. Where if we start to approach candidates earlier in that process, when they're thinking about moving, we may get the opportunity to work with exclusive candidates, and therefore we can put exclusive candidates to our clients earlier and faster than we have before. That is a very different touch and feel for our clients that they've never had before from a recruitment agency. Because you think what they knew is they ring up or you ring them, they give you a job and you go, right, let me go away and find a candidate, rather than let me present a candidate directly to you. And that's what's going on. So it's interesting. I've been working with one client who's quite heavy in the sort of low end market, let's call it. I'm not going to really reveal the market they're in, but low end market, temp market. And they're going to client meetings, but before they go, they're speaking to temps that are available and have them ready for interview. So when the client says, yeah, I'm interested in looking at this, right, why don't you speak to this temp right now? Because this temp's available. And they are converting clients left, right, and center because they are bringing the product to the client. So as your analogy, Martin, their shop is full of product. It's not the empty wasteland that is in most recruitment agencies, and then you start to fill it up. So I think to evolve our service offerings, we should start to look at a candidate service offering as well as the client service offering and approach it from a different angle. And I think if we approach it from the different angle, we take the product to the client rather than waiting for the client to ask for the product and then source it, we may have very different results this year from there. So when we're talking about that, let's sort of push this a little bit further then. Why is fostering then strong connections between your consultant and your clients critical to achieving sustainable growth? And how are you going to enable this as a business leader?
So I think it's, I'd like to think we'd all agree it is absolutely critical that you foster that close relationship between your clients and your consultants and yourself as a business owner. The client is the eyes and ears for what services are needed in the market. So if you're not talking to them regularly about what they're looking for, you won't be able to meet that demand and you'll be operating in isolation. And if you hit the mark, it'll be chance as much as it is skill. So I think you have to have that close relationship with customers to understand what they're looking for. I saw on LinkedIn, I think it was this week actually, there was a debate around KPIs, and the headline of the conversation was, are KPIs relevant in the modern world? And it was effectively saying that the KPIs of 100 phone calls a day, 3 hours on the phone, X meetings per week, etc., are they really relevant in today's marketplace and the challenges we face today? And the conclusion that the author came to was they weren't, and therefore you shouldn't run your business based on those KPIs. And I was scratching my head because it was such a narrow view that said the only KPIs you can have in your business are ones that are around calls and meetings, etc., etc. If you think a closer relationship between your consultants and clients is the way that you're going to stand out in the market and grow your business, build KPIs around there. There is no KPI rulebook that says as a business owner, you have to measure phone calls. Don't get me wrong, you may want to, but why not measure insights from customers or coffee meetings with customers or dinners with, whatever you want to measure? Why not change how you track and measure the performance of your consultants and even reward your consultants with the connections and the closeness that they have with their clients? So start thinking differently. If you agree that it is the right thing to do, put it at the heart of your business, measure it, use that to track performance of your consultants.
And I'm on a similar line to you on this, Martin. I mean, we as an industry, we tend to set KPIs, to use that expression, in a quantitative fashion. Make the amount of calls, the amount of this, the amount of that. And, it's about, it has its place, to be fair, but, it's about as prehistoric as it gets in lots of ways. We rarely see qualitative measures. So, I mean, very basic stuff around feedback from clients, around our service offerings, surveys and so forth, the way in which we appraise our staff, how do we measure them, what do we consider to be success? Now, success in our industry has always and understandably been defined as how many placements or how many contractors or temps we get out and the amount of revenue we generate. Obviously, that's pretty important. But, how much time is spent analyzing the quality of the service we provide to the two parties that we're engaged with, the clients and the candidates? And I'll add a third, our own people. How much time do we spend really understanding the impact of our services, good, bad, and indifferent? How often do we spend time stepping back to analyze the data that we're collecting, both from a statistical perspective and obviously from the point of view of actually, as we've been saying, sitting in front of clients and candidates and asking questions of their opinions about how we're doing and what we could do to improve and so forth? How often do we do that? Is it an annual issue? Do we do it weekly? Do we do it monthly, quarterly? How do we know what people genuinely think? And I think that this point about what success really looks like is a really, really profound question. Because if you want sustainable growth and you want sustainable development, really delighting your clients and candidates and being and becoming, as Howard talked about, being innovative and being contemporary, being at the, even if you can't be in front of the curve, being certainly there at the curve, those things are super important. And if you're not measuring it and you're not delivering a consultative service, then you're going to fall behind, because the issue around quantitative statistics is going to become, I think, yesterday's news. The truth of the matter is, and we'll talk about this shortly, is that technology is there now for our clients and our candidates to approach one another. It's becoming more and more sophisticated. Pretty easy for people to touch each other, as it were, digitally, and meet each other and talk to each other without our intervention. So what are we going to do that's going to improve our positioning? Back to the first question, how are we going to remain relevant in the industry, relevant when it comes to job seeking, relevant when it comes to finding the right candidates? And the answers will be in our ability to provide an outstanding service that is a markedly better than anything anyone can get online through AI or technology. You've got to pay attention to that. You have to know how you're seen in the market. And you won't understand that if you sit in your office and you do very little apart from crack the whip about the amount of phone calls that people are making or CVs being sent.
I've got a question that's coming from Hamish, but I'm going to answer this question first and then go back to Hamish's question so we can push that. So thanks for the question, Hamish. We are going to cover that. Okay. So I think, I'm going to sort of almost hone my inner Dave Pye here. That, we think we have a relationship with the business, but we don't. We have a relationship with the person within the business. And therefore, our consultants, we need to think about that relationship that we have with our consultant, as you said there, Paul, and our relationship with their client. And I think, therefore, we need training and developing our consultants on how to develop a relationship that actually matters. Because what we tend to create is a transactional relationship, which clients pick up and put down whenever they like. So we've got to look at how we can maintain that relationship. And I think that's by personal growth within our market. So looking at our own consultants and how do we develop them to create better relationships. But that means also then creating better processes that constantly challenge the consultant, because consultants, once they create a relationship, get a little bit lazy and never further develop the relationship. Back to Martin's comment about processes and products. We thought you were innovative, but you never carried on innovating. So it's the same with our consultants. You create a relationship, we've got to train them to create deeper, longer relationships with our clients, and that'll be critical for growth. But then we've got to start to think about what is critical for growth. It's not just that one client, it's more clients. So we have to train them on the surface to create initial relationships with our buying clients, but then train them the habit to create relationships with new clients. So you're always going to get a relationship that's either at the initial stage, the stranger stage, then into a prospect, then into a buyer, then into a promoter. We only think about creating a relationship when we get to the buying stage, but we should be thinking about taking that stranger into a prospect, into a buyer, and then into a promoter. So there's 4 relationships there going on all the time. And our consultants have different relationships with different types of clients, because it might be an infancy client where we've only just broken into it. It might be a client we've been working for 10 years. So we've got to start to think that we've got to develop the relationship process with our consultants to develop the relationship with each individual type of client as we get through the process.
And Howard, it's about giving them the confidence as well, because when I
Absolutely.
think of my most nervous times in recruitment are when I feel I'm outside the room and the customer's making a decision and I'm not influencing it. And when I think of my most fun times in recruitment, It is when I have a partnership relationship with a customer and you are talking to them about their business, even doing it over lunch, dinner, coffee, beer, whatever it might be. And it's encouraging particularly newer people to recruitment, that is not only an aspirational relationship, but that's what we should be going for. That's actually good fun. And it's actually what the customer wants as well.
Yeah. So let me jump into Hamish's question, because we've got loads of questions to ask and we're running out of time very quickly. So Hamish's question is this: super interesting conversation, a wee question. Does providing a list of available candidates day one not risk or devalue our work? For example, the longer and harder we appear to be looking, the increase the client's perception of value of work. Just a thought. And my thought is, they're paying us not for our ability to find candidates, they're paying us for our ability to knowledge of the marketplace. So if I can bring a candidate to you instantly, you're paying for my 30 years experience in recruitment, not my 30 minutes searching on a job board, etc.
Well, I think the other point here is that, and I mean, I don't know, I'm sure other people have had similar criticisms as we had, where you are able to find a candidate pretty easily for a client, first candidate for the interview, and they get offered the job, and the client pays a fee, but sort of, well, you didn't do an awful lot of work for this fee. I've had that. I'm sure other people have. And my answer was, well, it's just not an accident that we've always got great candidates available. And it costs a great deal of money for us to be able to do that. The investment in being able to attract and retain great candidates and always have the right candidates available when you need them is simply not an accident. And the fact that we're able to put forward really excellent candidates that match your needs and culture, again, is no accident. We understand who you are and what you need, and we understand what the so-called perfect fit looks like. So I don't think it's that's the measurement of our value. And I think, picking up your point, Howard, I mean, I always use this expression. It's, again, one of those old cliches, but I think we're paid to find the best candidates in the market, not on the market. And our ability to identify the people that are, generally speaking, working and not looking for another job, and attract those people to apply for roles that we've found, is where we add real value. Because if all we're going to do is find candidates that can easily be found by our clients, we're in big trouble. So I do feel that, it's not about the fact that it's about the time element that we spend in finding people. It's much more about going back to the central theme, our market positioning, and the value that is perceived that we provide because of, to your point, Howard, our knowledge of the marketplace.
Anything to add, Martin?
I think you're right. I think it's going to bleed into the next question on technology, Howard, is that it's around data entry. So I'll keep my powder dry, Howard. I'll talk about it in the next.
Okay. Keeping your powder dry. Fine. So then the next question then is, what role does tech and data play in helping you stand out in the recruitment industry? And how do you plan to innovate in this area in 2025?
There you go, Martin. You can get your powder wet now. Off you go.
Well, we had this conversation about technology just before Christmas on one of these webinars. And I think what really stood out for all of us is that the recruitment technology market is as complex and fast moving as it's ever been in our experience. There's so much going on out there. And if I said that the innovation question was the one that kept business owners awake at night, this has got to be a pretty close second as well. And what's interesting is that the spend on tech and the amount of tools available to businesses are just ridiculously more than when we were on the tools 20, 25 years ago. But the expectation of fee generation per consultant hasn't increased in the last 20 years. So all that investment in tech has done is kept the playing field level. So the answer to the first part of the question is, how to stand out is to keep running at the same pace as everybody else. The easiest way to stand out is to fall behind. So some of that investment is baked in, I'm afraid to say, which is a kind of a tough answer to give. But how you can really stand out is by using data better. And this is the point from the powder dry. You can have all the technology in the world. If you don't put the correct data into it and your data entry processes aren't effective, you won't be able to really monetize and get meaningful output from that information. So that example of sitting in front of a customer giving them a very quick response, which may seem easy. If you, with a click of the button, can say, on a daily basis, we speak to 2,000 candidates, we add 500 to our database, we screen this many, and we get it down. You can show the pipeline of activity on a click of a button to a customer before they get engaged, then that shows how much effort and kind of investment you're making. The problem is, to have that data at your fingertips, you need to be able to have that information put into your CRM correctly. And there's a customer I'm working with at the moment who we talked about how they differentiate themselves with their customer, and all they spoke about was the skills they provide in the market. And I had to get them to wind back and say, actually, you're not only credible experts in that technology space, you're actually credible recruiters. You should be able to advise the customer on their recruitment process. And if you can show the customer that they take, on average, 4 days more to go from long list to interview request than their competitors, you will be able to help them to add value and get better candidates. They couldn't answer that question because they weren't putting the data into their system. They tended to add the job, add the CV submission, add the interview dates all at the same time. It was a processing of a placement rather than as a tool to run their business. Now they've changed how they input data. They're able to sit in front of the customer, and if the customer says to them, well, that was easy, you didn't do anything, at the click of a button, they can show all the work that goes in to getting that CV in front of the customer.
Yeah. And I mean, I think technology is something that we have to invest in. It's not a something you get round to. It's got to be put into your annual budget. Yeah. But make sure that when you invest in technology, it's technology you need. I mean, the point that you were making, Martin, is that there's so much choice. There's so many new systems coming out, so much new software, that it's really easy to be drawn towards the next glittering thing that appears without really understanding whether you need it enough, or indeed whether you already have it but didn't realize it was sitting on your systems. So my advice always with technology is go speak to an expert. Go and speak to somebody that really understands how you can get the best out of your tech stack and what tech will add value to your business. And I think to your point, Martin, anything that you invest in that enables you to provide greater engagement with your candidates and enables you to streamline and speed up the processes that you implement when you're dealing with clients, where you've got output of data that you can provide to customers and so forth, is money well spent. Because what we want is our people to be capable of spending more and more time sitting in front of their clients and their candidates. So using the human touch, their own emotional intelligence. This is what we want our people to be doing. We don't really want our people to be spending hours and hours spending time in front of systems, trawling systems to find candidates and so forth, and deal with marketing that takes forever. We want that to be very swift, and we want it to be automated. So for me, I think that technology is super important. But I think it's got to be the right technology. But I'll come back to a point I've just made. You've also got to ensure that the people that work for you or with you and the new people you bring in have got the ability, or at least the potential, to be developed into true consultants, not recruitment consultants, because that's just a phrase, but people that are capable of understanding clients and candidates' real requirements and needs, and then to come back, think really hard alongside colleagues to come back with solutions, sometimes innovative, sometimes tried and trusted, but the ability to sit and listen and think through, critical thinking, analytical thinking, and provide the solutions that clients and candidates need. And anything that frees our people up to get the time to do that, it should be welcomed with open arms. Your investment in technology will be repaid in many ways, not least increased profitability, because you'll get yourself a standout position with your customers.
So I'm not going to add to anything to what Paul and Martin have just said, but I'm going to give you one innovation. The innovation is this: you need to train your people to use your systems.
Yeah.
And our people are trained very, very, very poorly to utilize and maximize our systems. So if you want a return on your technology and you want to innovate and you want to get your processes quicker, faster, slicker, train people to use your systems. And that will have a huge difference to your business. And it will identify whether your systems are capable of providing the results that you need, or whether you need to invest in better systems. But learn how to use your systems first and foremost, and then we start to move forward. And that's the big innovation, is that very few people know how to use their systems.
Well,
and
it's ongoing training as well, isn't it? We
Yeah,
train people when they join, and then we leave them with their training.
Yeah.
But they're
Well,
not.
we don't train them when we join, and this is the bit, Paul. You think about this, and I use everyone thinks that their product is innovative and anyone can use it. It's so easy to use. It's so easy to get in. When actually, I might look at it and go, God, that's really difficult. Martin looks at it and go, oh, that's really easy. Paul, you look at it and go, that's in Spanish. Don't even know what's going on with it. And that's the thing, because everyone's got a different view of how intuitive things are and what have you. And therefore, everyone needs training. And that's it. So move on to the next question.
And also, Howard, before we do, I'd say challenge your suppliers of your IT. They might have developed their product.
Yeah.
If it's in their interest, you use it. So
Yeah.
push back to them, get them to help you.
Quite.
Yeah. So how do you measure and define success as a recruitment leader, and how will those benchmarks evolve in 2025?
Okay. I'm going to quote you here, Howard. You've given us some Davisms. I'm going to give Howardism.
No.
Your big hairy ass goals that you talk about. I want to say,
I can't believe I've ever said the word ass on live.
I've seen it in a document, Howard, so I can point to
only internal people, only internal documents.
Okay, I'll change that. Put an asterisk there. But I think that they still are and will remain really important as a business. You have to have a goal that excites, scares, it gets you out of your bed in the morning. And you have to have that for your business, for your staff, for your customers, for your clients. It makes you compelling to work with and for. That said, in a really challenging market, you've also got to have realistic goals that keep people motivated and keep people progressing and feeling as if they are doing a good job in the right circumstances. So I would differentiate between input goals and output goals. I think you can be quite aggressive with input goals in any marketplace. What are you expecting the activities of your consultants and yourself to be on an hourly, half daily, daily, weekly, quarterly basis? So what can you control? And you should be driving ambitious targets there. When it comes to outcomes, that's where you may bring an element of reality in, given the current marketplace. But I would still say you can focus on quality instead of quantity. So you can look at the metrics. So if your consultant has 10 live jobs, you want them filling 7 of them. So you can focus on that qualitative measure as well as the inputs. And the key will be celebrate success of those. Celebrate if they're having a good week of activities. Not necessarily monetary, but give them a pat on the back, put them at the top of a leaderboard, whatever it might be to keep that momentum going. And then the outcomes will come as a result of that. Because coming back to my point about KPIs, you're not rigidly stuck to any KPI rulebook. You can define your KPIs and the expectations you have in any given month and any given quarter. So what does good look like for you as a business owner in the next quarter, and what behaviors are you going to recognize and reward as a result?
And I mean, I think this comes back to what I was saying earlier. What does success look like for you?
Yeah.
Is it going to be the same old, same old? I think you've got to change your perspective. But it starts from the position as leaders of defining what success looks like for the business. Now, I think we tend to have too many goals and aspirations. You've got to really thin that down. What are the 2 or 3 things by the end of this year that you're hoping to achieve? If you give yourself too broad, too many goals, and you're, as you should be, communicating those goals to your staff, they're just going to get confused, and it becomes thinned out, and in the end, pretty irrelevant. So what is it you've already thought about in terms of where you want to be this time next year? What is it you're trying to achieve? What's your net score going to look like, and how are you going to measure those? How are you going to measure those goals, if you like? Now, I also think, and we've often said this, and it's true in our industry. There are 2 things. Number one, you're only as good as the things you can measure. Number one. Number 2, your bonus plans need to reflect the behaviors that you're seeking in your business. So I think one of the things you've got to do once you've decided how you're going to improve and what success looks like for you, in that, as I said earlier, that qualitative area, those qualitative areas, How are you going to pay people for achieving those things? Now, you could argue you shouldn't need to, and that people should be working for the benefit of the business, and I wouldn't disagree with that. But, if I engage the cynical side of my brain, shaped after 50 years in the industry, I'm going to come back to telling you all that people will always say, what's in it for me? Even if they don't say it out loud, they're saying it in the pub to each other, and they're certainly thinking it. So what are you going to do to measure their success, and how are you going to reward it? And it starts with you and the senior leadership team. What does success look like? Define it, and then plan towards achieving it.
I'm going to put into place something that I did as a manager, as a leader, something that I've embedded into my management training that I've been doing with lots of companies, etc. And I'd measure my success as a leader in the following way. Everything is based around retention and retraction. So as retention and attraction sort of comes, as a leader, am I retaining my staff? Are we developing them? Are they becoming champions of my business? Have I got a process that attracts new staff? Is my culture in my business conducive to retaining my key people and embedding the new people into the cult? Because after all, cult comes from the word culture. So we've got to start to think. The second thing I'd start to do then is I'd replace the word staff and put in the word clients and candidates. Because if my staff are servicing the industry in the same fashion I as a leader are servicing them, then they'll become part of the cult as well, the clients and the candidates. So how you treat your staff in most cases is mirrored in how your staff treat your clients and your candidates. So if I was going to measure something, I'd measure my retention on all of those three areas: my staff, my clients, and my candidates, because that's a reflection of you and your business.
Yeah, and you want to keep it simple. Your messaging simple, not how a difficult. See what I did there?
It all comes from the word culture, Paul. So let's move on, because we're pressing on time. So I'm going to skip a question and move a question. If we get to we can go back to it, we will do. So the last question then is, how are you going to ensure your vision of 2025 is lived out daily by your consultant and resonates with your clients and candidates?
I think Paul's point was really important for this question. It's got to be simple. What it is that you're hoping to achieve this year, and if you can't get that into a sentence or two, then it's probably too complex. So my first point will be is, do you have that clear vision? And if you went and asked your staff, what is the vision for the business this year, can they articulate that quickly themselves? Because it's great expecting them to talk to customers and candidates about it, but do they understand it? And then the second point is that your vision isn't just about your business, it's about the impact your business has on candidates, clients, and staff. So if you have a vision, the question you should ask yourself repeatedly is, so what? If I'm a client, I hear your vision, so what? Same with a member of staff, same with a candidate. You've got to be able to link the success of your vision to the success of your candidates, clients, and staff's vision. So by that, I mean, sit down with Bobby, your consultant in your team, and say, what do you hope to achieve this year, Bobby? I want to put a deposit down on a house. Perfect. How many placements do you have to make? How many deals do you have to do? At what value, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the vision I have for my company, and here's how us together can help succeed and do that. And the same with candidates, the same with clients. Show your customer that you achieving your vision helps them. So if you want exclusivity of business, tell the customer why it's important to them. You can control their value proposition to market. You can control the messages that customers, that the candidates are hearing from their brand if you have exclusivity. Don't just ask for exclusivity. Show them the success of your vision linked to the success of theirs.
Well, I think that well said. There's not a lot more to add to this. My view, I mean, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. I think when Nike started, their vision was kill Adidas. I think it was 2 words. Everybody got it. Everybody knew what the mission of Nike was. Keep it simple. Keep your vision statements simple. Make sure people understand them. Repeat them daily like a mantra. Let's make sure we have I know this is so old-fashioned, but please have daily meetings. I'm amazed at how irregular meetings are with staff in certain organizations. our business works really quickly. Things change from minute to minute, let alone from hour to hour. You cannot afford to go a day without sitting down with the team, and in my view, 2 to 3 times a day, to establish where we are, what we're doing, what needs to be done in the next few hours, and so forth. But it's underpinned by the vision of the leaders and indeed the buy-in of the people that work in the organization. Keep it simple, keep repeating it, keep measuring it, and drive forward, and don't give up just because it doesn't work first, second, or third time. Keep going, because in the end, resilience pays off.
I think vision is a very interesting word. And I think a lot of people don't really have a vision that connects, as Martin has said, to the client, to the candidate, and to the consultant. And I think when you're creating a vision, you should be able to read it, and whichever person is reading, it should be personal to them. It should mean something to them. So I think how you're going to live your daily vision and how you're going to live it out from that resonates with what you've actually put into your vision. You know, is it going to be achievable? Is it something that you can actually do? And then that links into your strategy, and your processes should all be linking back to your vision and drive it. And I think we've got to start to think that sometimes we create visions that are very insular and almost insulting to clients, to candidates, and to consultants, because they're never going to be achieved. I'm going to be the best recruitment company in the world. Really? Question mark. How are you going to achieve that? What does that mean to me as a client? What does that mean to a consultant? What does that mean to a candidate? Absolutely nothing. So we've got to start to think it has to resonate with them, as Martin has said, and it has to be something that they can reach, touch, and achieve. And it has to be something that pins the business together, and that's pinning all the 3 C's together, all your candidates, your clients, and your consultants, so that they live and breathe your vision all the time. So it's one last question then. I'm going to use this as a very quick throwaway, because I think this is a question that should be answered quickly and doesn't need a long answer. What strategies are you implementing to build a reputation of a thought leadership in the recruitment industry or your niche industry that you're recruiting into?
I think it's tempting to delegate the responsibility to thought leadership to the big corporates, and you assume they've got a macro view of the market and they therefore should be able to drive innovation. Whereas actually, I would just put it back to you and say, do you want to work on a market, or do you want to be part of that market? And what I mean is, if you want to be part of a market, organize get-togethers, bring candidates together in a pub over a drink to talk about the common challenges they face, bring clients together as part of a networking event to talk about what challenges they're going to have. Thought leadership will come from that, and you'll be seen as being part of that market, not just outside and trying to feed off of it.
I think that we take our lead very often from the big corporations and the loudest voices in the world, and yet most of our clients are SMEs. I think get close to the SMEs, understand what their requirements and needs are, what they're thinking about, be a thought leader for that particular, if you like, demographic, and make sure that you're their voice, because their needs and their requirements and their concerns are not necessarily the same as the large conglomerates. So be close to them, become the thought leader for your sector and your demographic.
I'm going to go back to one of the previous answers. Be talking about what your clients are talking about and what your candidates are talking about, where they are talking about it. There's no point talking about it in your own office, because your clients and your candidates can't hear you. Your consultants can, but no one else can. So I think as a thought leader, you need to get your thoughts in the market where your clients and candidates and consultants are. Martin, Paul, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you much for attending. It's great to see you all back. It's great to see some new faces as well. So feel free to come to the next session. The next session is next Wednesday. It's how to maximize your target audience to increase your revenue. Again, something I think is going to be critical in 2025. So that is to say, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the week. See you all next week. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.